I was always painting and drawing as a kid. That was my passion, that was where my heart was since I was 5 years old. And then you start growing up and having to take real life choices and find your path. So why don't you just choose what is considered the best? At some point, I realized that I can go into mathematics, study that for the rest of my life, but is it really where I'm going to find myself? I had to fight for it. I was ready to lose it all. I was ready to start all over. That's why I started painting. This was my way of trying to communicate. Then I found my way and I started to do it professionally and academically. My work usually starts with some thumbnails, simple sketches, mostly in pen, and then I move into acrylic paint. I love acrylic because of the speed it allows me to work with. Sometimes I want to play with scale and installations, so there is a little bit of multidisciplinary practice in my work, but I mostly dabble with paintings and acrylic on canvas. The idea comes before the painting. As I go on and I paint, I just create the atmosphere, figure out what color I want. So it's not really a process where I already know where I'm going to end up. I just go as it comes. It's based on my intuition and a lot of memories. Art to me, the way I came into it was very personal. It was a way for me to connect to my family. And I was the only child until I was 7. And this was something that my parents used to do together. These little things connected me to art. It's not just the paintings. Iranian culture is full of stories, full of myths, full of culture. Iranian culture itself was a lot of inspiration, I think, to me as a child. I used to read a lot of Persian poetry. Shahnameh was part of our life. Hafiz was part of our life. Art became a way of communication, and now I can see that when I make the art, I communicate to people. I think after I studied education for my master's, I realized how important the psyche of a child's upbringing is. You know, those early ages until 5, 7 are the most important part of a child's life, and that's what shapes you as a person. I think whatever ideas I had back then are still similar to right now. I grew up, but I still always try to solve things that I used to think or feel back then. I feel as a kid I didn't have the outlet to speak. Maybe it was my personality, maybe it was just the environment, but there was just too much pressure for a child to carry. And now that I'm older, I have the resources to look back and I just keep cracking the codes. And I realized that at some point when I grew up into a teen, when I wanted to express myself, I couldn't. So then painting became an outlet, and then I could paint. The painting would let me express what I felt. I think even now my process is mostly about that and how I can translate those feelings into the painting. Art just becomes a way out for somebody that couldn't speak up. If I feel vulnerable, if I feel like I need protection, whether it's emotional, whether it's the physical feeling of safety, it's still in me. And that inner child still needs protection. So I try to find a way to paint it. I started having a dream journal and taking notes of my dreams since, I think, 2020. And since then, I think a lot of people were having collective dreams. I might dream 8 dreams per night, and I would wake up in the middle of the night, write it, go back to sleep, write it, go back to sleep, and I remember everything. The dreams were just a channel of learning what's going on in my subconscious. I realized I love the fluidity of dreams. There's a freedom that the dream gives me. The rules are not there, you know, the gravity can shift. And that's what I like to put in my paintings. Because the dream world inspires me, of how I don't want to take the logic of the real world too seriously. And I want to take it kind of flowy, like how the inner child and the childhood world and imagination is. For me, those animals that I was raised with and adopting and rescuing, the animals were a form of pure love that I was used to. And since over a year ago, when I moved to Belgium, I got an autoimmune disease. And the eczema that I used to have since I was a kid became very severe and turned into a blood infection, sepsis, and it added a lot of limitations to my daily life and things that I used to do before. So even painting is a trigger for me now. And at some point I was advised to let it go, but I try to work around it, take the medication, wear the gloves, reduce the tactile contact with the paint, but I just can't let it go. And that's the same thing with animals, so I used to rescue, I still sometimes do, but now I cannot keep them for a very long time. If I see them really in need, I try to give them the help they need, and then I have to rehome them. I paint a lot of animals now in the recent series, and that's just a form of protection. It's a form of coping, a way of how I can manage this situation now. It's a form of healing for me to paint these scenes and animals, and kind of deal with the pain. I mean, when the pain was very, very intense, I started documenting photos of my body, writing about it, and then I tried to think how I can translate this. Now I want to talk about this, but I don't want it to be in your face. I want people to still be able to understand the pain without the shock value. I want it to be approachable. These characters are not just one specific cat or one certain animal. They are references to wild animals, animals that are misunderstood, like the fox, the teddy bears, the plushies. Every type of representation that I can put on these animals to tell a story. Whether they're birds, whether they're plants, whether they're animals, just a living creature that deserves our love and respect and protection. So most of the time, my audience naturally becomes women, and I think they have a sense of being a protector. And usually we think it's the man of the house that's the protector, right? But I think women, we have that intuitive feeling that we want to give love, we want to give comfort, we want to protect. So when audiences come to me, most of the time, it's women that come and tell me, "Oh, your art feels like a hug to me." And I think it's kind of comforting because I'm trying to put out there and become what I wanted to have as a kid.